One interview, 10 to 15 minutes. And if they like you, they'll tell you by the end of the day that you're in. And if they don't, they'll tell you by the end of the day that you didn't make it. So I was just thinking like, I want to start a business. I'll apply to YC. That's going to be my way to learn how all this happens. A big thing that I learned from YC, or just from the building community in general, is, how important talking to users is. How I feel is that if I worry too much about getting funding, it's just going to make my iteration speed for my product lower. Launch as fast as possible, move as fast as possible. Writing code was left a lot to, like junior engineers can write code and you can review their PR. Generally what you rely on senior engineers for is their thoughts on like system design and how the system should look. If you're listening to this and you have a YC interview coming up, definitely you should.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the AI Founder Story. If you haven't gone through the previous episodes, I highly recommend you doing so. You can just click somewhere on the screen. This challenge is simple but serious. I'm building and launching an AI-native SaaS product that either generate $100,000 in revenue or that exits at that value. It has to be AI operational at its core, not just branded by AI, but actually run by it. We are starting bootstrapped. No external investors, no pre-built AI products that have made revenue. It's solo-led, but not done in isolation. I'll bring in collaborators, collaborative support, automation tools, and even partnerships or sponsorships, so long as I stay hands-on with every decision and build. The entire process is being shared in real time, transparently, with successes and failures, no sugarcoating. And just to be clear, this isn't a step-by-step guide or promise of any form of result. It's a personal challenge I'm documenting publicly, not a prescription for what you should do. So please do not misunderstand this built-in public challenge. Now, back to the episode. So today I'm sitting down with Ryan, a software engineer. We talk about Ryan's path from big tech to YC, what he do with early capital, and the hard truths about co-founders, speed, and talking to users. So if you're wondering about what YC is and what companies actually used it, Y Combinator is a investment accelerator that essentially help companies get funded so that they can get a jumpstart into their build. Looking at some companies that was funded by Y Combinator that went global include giants like Airbnb, Replit, Coinbase, Stripe, alongside many other successful companies. These are just a few examples from YC's portfolio of over 5,000 startups who has resulted in a combined valuation exceeding 800 billion. Yeah, let that sink in. Ryan also worked with TikTok, he's also worked with Yahoo, and he got into YC. Now he's building a really smart email manager called Extra Thursday. We dive deep into the real stuff. Founders ask me all the time, like, do I chase funding or do I just ship? What does YC actually look for? Is voice agents the future or are general agents the real unlock? And where is Replit heading now that their agents can plan, build, and fix code end to end? Quick note, this isn't advice. I'm sharing my process and lessons I'm collecting in public. Your context is your context. Ryan, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks, Johnny.
Awesome, Ryan. So for everyone listening, Ryan, if you could give them just a short rundown of your journey up until now, what did that look like? And what has your experience been specifically with apps?
I've always been interested in building and especially in entrepreneurship. I've always wanted to do something for myself. And so naturally, I feel like with the tech world blowing up back when I was in high school, I was like, okay, well, it's got to be tech. If I want to build something, it's most likely going to have to be something in tech. So then I went the CS route, computer science, in college. I attended Berkeley, and then after Berkeley, I worked at TikTok and Yahoo as a software engineer. And then at TikTok and Yahoo, that's where I really began thinking, working in a big tech company, that's probably not going to be something I'm going to be doing for a while. So 2 years in the large tech company, I left eventually, started working on my first startup. It was called DataSci Pro. Started working on that for a few months, building out data science agents. Got into YC, and then in YC, continued building it. At some point, we scaled to about 2,000 weekly active users. And then I left YC, left the company, stepped out, and now I'm building Extra Thursday. So that's kind of my arc. So for Extra Thursday, it's taken on a few, not a few, but two major form factors. At the start, it was mostly a voice first email management app. So I was very focused on being able to speak to your inbox. Wanted you to be able to draft emails, tell it to review emails, all through voice in like a 2 minute conversation. But talking to users, I found that although voice, I feel, would be like the future of interacting with AI for maximal efficiency, a lot of people didn't use it too much because I think right now there's still voice is still a little clunky sometimes, and interacting with AI through voice sometimes doesn't get you the results that you want. So now it's taken on more of a asynchronous email manager feel too. So the email agents in the backend, when emails come in, processes them, summarizes, does all that. So when you log on Extra Thursday, there's just a summary ready to go about your inbox, tracks open loops, tracks action items, and then there's drafts already prepared for you to send. So, but the voice feature is still there. That's still something I'm working on and hopeful about. So, yeah, that's the general timeline or general arc of my app so far.
By the way, guys, I do have a link down in the description for you guys to try out Extra Thursday. Ryan, I'm sure you guys are still in the beta phase, if I'm not mistaken.
Very early stage.
Very early phases. Yeah, so guys, maybe there's a fee by the time you click the link down below, but I know for now, you guys will have access to that. Can you give us a snapshot of just more or less what the product was and the problem that you guys solved when looking to get funding from YC?
Yeah, the DataSci Pro, my first startup, it was it kind of had like an evolution throughout our YC application process. So it started. I think we applied total 4 times to YC with the first startup, and it started with actuarial software. So we were really targeting actuaries. And I think, at least for me, I don't want to speak for everyone else, but for me, uh, I didn't even know what an actuary was. I hadn't heard of it until like maybe like just like right when I was in college. Actually, I had a friend who was an actuary in the MBA program at Berkeley. So that was probably the first ever time I've heard an actuary. But yeah, I think the fact that we were targeting um, such a niche demographic, I think that's what caught YC's eye at first, and then we eventually transitioned to more data science, like not targeting that niche anymore. We're more open to just data science in general. I don't know if that was a good decision or not, but that's what happened. And then around the time we transitioned is when we got into YC. But yeah, and to speak on the focusing on niche part, I feel like maybe we should have stuck to just actuaries, because I think a lot of what YC emphasizes being able to narrow down and niche down on something that maybe is boring or people don't really is not something that people really care about, but just get that niche really or work really well in that niche and then expand. So I think that's what really got my attention, being able targeting actuaries, and then yeah.
Yeah, we've seen the same thing in business as well. You know, a lot of times guys just try to start out and they, you know, usually they don't niche down. You know, for them it's try to go broad and try to serve everyone, but really fixing, or let me rather say, solving a specific problem for a good audience that's really problem aware, that needs to get their problem solved. That's really where, if you can provide that solution, where with the gold sets, if I can put it like that. Share with me, Ryan, like what did you guys decide to go through the VC route, or would you say that's just like the general approach out of college? You know, building software, Do you is that just like the route you follow? You're looking for funding and building off the funding. What would you say?
Yeah, yeah. I think, like I said, I came out of college going straight into software engineering. So software engineering and big tech is, I'd say, like a totally different world than building on your own. So to be honest, when I was working as a software engineer and even when I was off trying to like build DataSci Pro, and even when I was in YC, I was or I am still clueless. So it's it's like a whole new world, and I think when I first jumped into it, I was just thinking to myself, like, I need as much help as I can get. I don't really know what I'm doing. I know how to build software. I don't really know how to approach building a business. I don't really know how to approach scaling business, any of that. And at that point, when I was working in the Bay as a software engineer, I think a lot of people knew about YC. YC is kind of I think just like the startup accelerator. So I was just thinking I want to start a business. I'll apply to YC, and that's gonna be my ticket in, or that's gonna be my way to learn how all this happens. And that's kind of what led me to wanting to apply to YC. And it wasn't even about the funding actually. The funding aspect is nice, but it was more of I don't know what I'm doing and I want to weigh in basically.
That makes sense. Thanks for sharing, man. And then would you say after the first round of funding, right? How did you guys think how to deploy that capital? Like, what was the priorities in deploying it? Did you guys have a plan? Was it just maybe putting it towards marketing or productizing? How did you guys spend that first round?
Yeah, unfortunately, I get too far into spending the YC cash because I stepped out of YC um, about 2 weeks before demo day, but
Okay.
I can't speak on what I think I would have spent it on. I think it would have been a lot of, I think mostly spent on building. I feel like because at that point, a lot of my feelings on what DataSci Pro was that we weren't building fast enough, and anything that could have gotten our velocity like 10x or something, I would have done. So most likely, I think the spending would have been allocated to that.
Okay, that makes sense. And tell me, did you guys consider AI at the time? Was AI present at the time?
Yeah, yeah. This was I did YC spring 2025. So our company DataSci Pro was basically AI agents for data science. So yeah.
Okay. So how, if you were to deploy that money, thinking back at it now, you mentioned most probably the expenses would have gone for team, right? More software developers. Can you maybe explain just for us? Dude, I've got no clue how software engineering work. Look, I love vibe coding. Don't get me wrong, and the fact that you can build tools that you dreamed about when you started in business and seeing all the problems that you're facing that you need tools for. And now I can go into Replit. It's fully autonomous, and I just describe what I want, and it does a very good job. I think I built an app, well, finished an app last week, and what the app basically does is help you to rotate and split test your YouTube thumbnails and your YouTube titles. And it uses AI to help suggest the titles, but also to give you feedback and the metrics so that if you're looking back at your data, you can start to see, right, AI is suggesting this thumbnail and title works better together because of this reason. So it will rotate it according to that. And dude, I've got like I said, no experience in software engineering. But I do also know other people that's fully in SaaS. They run a software business that's got maybe 20 plus engineers on it. And the thought that just continuously go through my mind is, but is that still needed right now? Is that something that you still need? And if so, for what would one allocate a senior developer for then? If you have agents like Replit is insane, man. I'm not sure if you've played around with it, but that by itself to me is like, but again, I'm speaking from a place of lack of knowledge, right? You may look at it and you might think like, dude, you don't know there's some vulnerabilities in the code there that you're not taking into consideration because you don't know, or whatever the case may be. What do you think?
Yeah, I think my honest opinion. I'm going to preface it with its opinion. I'm not too sure if it's going to be correct, but in I'd say in at least 10 years or something. I don't know, but I think it's inevitable at this point that it won't be required to have a team, or not even a team, like a really small team at least, of software developers to develop an app. I mean, one person can develop an app from scratch, but I mean, build out an app that could serve like billions of people and continue maintaining it. For that, I feel like to not need a team for that, it will be inevitable that AI would be able to do that. But right now, what I feel is that where software engineers would add value would be in the system design, because I feel like maybe there are AI tools that do this very well, or vibe coding tools that do this very well. But a lot of what I've seen using Claude Code is like my main coding copilot. But a lot of what I've seen is sometimes when I want things done, it would implement them in ways that wouldn't be, I don't know, wouldn't handle scale well, like wouldn't handle large amounts of users, because the design is, let's say, like, I don't know, it runs like large chunks of code sequentially, and it doesn't really implement any like event driven architecture and stuff like that. So it's stuff like that. I feel like at this point, the big picture stuff, the planning, isn't really. I don't know. With my experience, it's not really something that agents do very well. But I could be wrong, because I know there's Devin or something from Cognition Labs, or I might be getting the name wrong, but like essentially like an AI software engineer. And I've never tried something like that before, but maybe there are AI agents out there that would be able to handle designing a very good system, a very good design, and then implementing it. But right now, as it is, I feel like for a regular consumer, it's very hard. It's very hard if you don't have software engineering experience. I think building an app is possible, and it's actually very easy. But maintaining it maintaining it for when it scales, that might get a little bit hard.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's definitely a conversation that's currently happening in the marketplace. I would say is a lot of the, well, I would say predominantly, there's one business owner that I speak to quite frequently. He runs a software business. They build software, and they run hundreds of thousands of users on platform, and their senior developers are very much against using AI. And if they have junior developers coding with it, specifically vibe coding, like with perhaps using Cursor or Claude Code, they tend to find themselves not being able to resolve the bugs. Obviously, the junior developers can't, but the senior developers also is trying to understand the code, like how did you write this, or how did you get to that. So that definitely is a bottleneck that I'm identifying. Funny enough, Replit, I'm not sure if you've played with Replit, Ryan. It's really mind blowing.
Really, I gotta give it a shot.
Yeah, dude, it's really good. Amiad, the CEO and founder, he apparently wrote part of JavaScript's language and coded his first app when he was 6.
Okay.
So the mind that went into developing it is very good, and they've now released Replit Agent 3 2 weeks ago. It's now past vibe coding. It literally writes all the code. And the nice thing about Replit, if I'm comparing it to all the other tools, I mean, we've used Bolt, Lovable, there's many others that we've tried as well, is they give you good front end. The code is good and you can have a good MVP perhaps, where you could see what it could look like, etc. And then you can get the backend stored as well through the platform. But the deployment and taking scalability into consideration, that's not there. And Replit covers that as an example. And what I like about Replit as well is that the agents are coding and they resolve their own bugs now. So it literally goes, you describe it, it gives you the plan back of what are things you want to achieve. Then you can either approve or disapprove that. And then based on that, the agents just go in their code and they resolve every single bug. Dude, it's unreal. They also built in their own authentication. So we don't necessarily have to go to Firebase to grab Google's sign-in authentication. Basically, they have that through Replit. They've also got the company's called SimGroup that helps with security architecture. So when you deploy, you can first, there's like a tab you open up for security and it shows you all the code vulnerabilities, and then you just click fix with agent. So it's like where I'm positioned at hearing what you're saying, and seeing what's also currently happening in the space is mind blowing. It really is. Now, again, I don't have that technical know-how or experience to even look at the code and say, okay, you know what, this is going to be a problem when we get there. And it's so good to hear that from you, specifically with the experience that you have, is that is definitely something everyone should take into consideration when vibe coding, is making 100% sure that you understand what those vulnerabilities could look like within longevity, especially if you're looking to build something that solves real problems and that manages other people's data. That's also, security is a huge component.
Yeah, 1000%. I think it's super important, and actually a good example of how important good system design is that when you're a software engineer and you interview for generally when you interview for anything past entry level software engineering, software engineer level 2, 3, 4, senior engineer, anything past entry level, the interviews normally go from simply like leak code questions. Leak code questions are like basically like problems that software engineers have to solve that rely on very fundamental concepts of computer science and data structures. But yeah, they go from leak code questions to essentially all systems design interviews. So if you're interviewing for anything past entry level, the interview process looks like a lot of system design. So for most of the interviews, they're actually not even coding anymore. You'd be hopping on a meeting and you'd have like a shared whiteboard or something with the interviewer, and they would just ask you questions of like, hey, if you were to redesign like Tinder's backend or something, or Amazon's like shopping service, or Amazon's something service, how would you do it? And you would just kind of map out with no code, just kind of map out the different systems that you would be using to handle the load. And that's basically what all the interviews look like. So it's, I think that
Wow.
that's like a good example of, when you get into industry, how important good system design is. Because writing code, I think even before vibe coding, writing code was left a lot to, like junior engineers can write code and you can review their PR, although their code maybe it won't be great. But generally what you rely on senior engineers for is their thoughts on like system design and how the system should look. So yeah, good system design is definitely important. Yeah, so I have a interesting point you bring up about Replit. So I haven't had a chance to try it out too much. I've tried it out one time to try to code some React Native with it because I don't have too much experience with React Native, and I wanted something that would be able to build out a React Native front end. But that's kind of the only time. But when I was in YC, actually, I remember in one of the talks with Paul Graham, he brought up, and Paul Graham's kind of like he's one of the founding members of YC, one of the original founding members. So a lot of people take his words very, I don't know, put a lot of emphasis on his words and into what he says and his advice. So I remember during one of the talks, YC, I mean, Paul Graham brought up Replit and said that Replit was a good example of um, the ethos to just not die. So a lot of the startups, I think, when they're building, sometimes they founders get sad, or founders, I don't know, lose motivation and simply give up, and then startup dies. And I think Paul Graham was trying to tell us there that the most important thing is to simply not die. Like, you maybe, if you don't have traction right now, just or things aren't going great right now, just don't die, because you don't know what will happen. You might blow up one day. So Replit was an example, and because Replit was actually around for even before vibe coding was a thing, and they're just kind of, they were doing well and just carrying along. And then Paul said that when ChatGPT dropped and vibe coding kind of came into people's minds, like, oh, this is a thing that we could do. Replit, like, it was just trucking along, and it just blew up, like it exploded. And he was like, yeah, like, can you imagine if the founders of Replit, I don't know, pivoted, or not pivoted, but if they gave up, or some founders, when this huge gold mine of vibe coding was just like on the horizon, if they just gave up before then, because I mean, they didn't know it was on the horizon, but they gave up, you know. So, it's yeah, he just used it as a great example of, like, don't give up. You don't know what's going to happen. And yeah, I just, that came to my mind when you brought up Replit, because I don't have too much experience with it, with Replit, coding for Replit. But whenever people talk about Replit, because I know it's a huge company now, I think of that story of, like, don't die.
Yeah, dude, it's mind blowing. It really is, and it also just shows understanding innovation and identifying those gaps. If you can build something that you can almost project would be, a problem to solve, and that's what the vision was there. It sounds like it's like, how can you build agents to code, and not just crude agents? It's like fully autonomous, communicating with one another, solving problems together without having any human
Oh
involved.
man, I gotta try out Replit.
You should. And the nice thing I saw now as well is that you can plug in your GitHub repository. So now you can get
Oh
Replit to fix your bugs, and to, so even though you code your own stuff, you plug it in there, and now you've got like an entire team of agents that can
yeah,
just go and resolve your bugs.
that is so true.
Another thing that I saw that they also did, they now have a function. So back in the day on Replit, you had templates that you can choose, and it will be different frameworks that you can build on. But there was parameters within those frameworks. But now they've opened it up. There's like a button that you click that says general. And now you can say, build me a React Native app, mobile app, and use Expo as a template. So now you can literally test. I built a game for my niece a few weeks back. The old Tamagotchi. I'm not sure if you can remember the Tamagotchi, like the
Really?
physical
Yeah,
device you
yeah.
needed to care for. Yeah, but a digital one. And now you basically work, you code on your phone in React, everything is good, and you deploy from Expo. And it can now
Wow.
do that. And there's guys that apparently built in, you can build in Angular. There's so many different frameworks that's now available. But the nice thing, I think, specifically, is that you can plug your code infrastructure in there. So now you don't necessarily need to go debug yourself. The agent can learn and see the way your frameworks are set up, and it can still follow that infrastructure and still help you to resolve the bugs, which just makes it so much more agile and effective.
No, that's awesome. I gotta try that out. Yeah. The fact that I can plug in pre-existing code, I think that's the biggest selling point for me.
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm trying to figure out how does that how does Replit provide value to someone that like a developer, like you, as a senior developer? How do they solve those problems? And maybe that's not the demographic that they're targeting, but I think they have pivoted right now where it's like, okay, they are leading. I think they're close to a 3 billion valuation most recently. It's crazy where they are at right now, but they're innovative. They're extremely innovative. They truly are building, like I said, it's not even vibe coding anymore. It's now agents go and run for 6 hours straight, resolving the code. You just say what you need, and it builds it out. Going back to the YC and everything that you guys did there, Would you say that if you were building a software company today, and I'm not sure if with Extra Thursday, if that's going to become a company or if it's just an offer that you're looking to grow, uh, but again, if you were to build that today from scratch as an example, would you still go the funding route, or are you doing a bootstrap?
I think I'm open to it, and I definitely would. Right now with Extra Thursday, I think definitely Extra Thursday is what I hope to be something I could grow into a large company one day. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I definitely would go the funding route. I think not just because of the obviously, like I said before, funding is nice, but I think there's also a lot of the fact that I'm still learning. Especially in business, I'm still learning, and I think I I would like to get advice and mentorship and all that. And I think a lot of the accelerator programs and the getting funding through YC or getting through other startup accelerators, stuff like that. I think I did like the mentorship in YC. So I think that's something that I'd be really interested in doing again. Um, but yeah, I think also the benefit of going through these accelerators, I think, especially if you go through a more prestigious one, is that raising becomes easier. Raising from others becomes easier because you have that like cosign from like a reputable accelerator. And then obviously once you get more funding, I think growth. If your priority is to move fast and grow as fast as possible, I think it's something that with at least some amount of funding is preferable. It's like yeah. I feel like right now how I look at it is I want to move as fast as possible. I want to build as fast as possible, and I just think it's not certainly not the only way. Bootstrapping is also a totally valid option, but I think getting securing at least some funding, not like I'm not saying like crazy amount like has, but like at least some funding is definitely I think the way to go. But it's also not my target. My target is to just be building all the time. If I didn't have to raise and all that, I would rather to just not do that and just build my app into like an empire. But you know, it's very hard to do without money sometimes.
It is. We are in this challenge that you're in, the AI founder story. When vibe coding launched, we had this idea, taking our business and marketing skills from over the years and seeing if that is repeatable in a SaaS model. So, we are bootstrapping and seeing if we can build software and sell it for $100,000. Still not sure how doable that is. I mean, I can quickly map it out from a coaching offer. But that makes sense and done that before. But considering software, what that looks like, subscriptions, small amounts, yeah, it definitely is something. It is something new. So, would you say, looking at Extra Thursday of where it is right now, are you still aiming to get product market fit before considering going for raising? Like, what are those indicators that you're looking for where you can get to and say, okay, right, I've got good amount of members using it. There is a need in the market for it. Like now it's time to go and raise.
Yeah, I think right now I'm not too worried. Although I would, getting funding and joining a startup accelerator would be great, and that's something I think will be, eventually be, a good thing for Extra Thursday. Right now, kind of my mental model going for that is I fill out these applications to these accelerators, YC, the speedrun application recently I just filled out, and then SPC as well. That's South Park Commons. That's kind of as far as it goes. That's the extent of me being interested in joining these accelerators and potentially getting funding. I'm not really doing anything else going out of my way to do anything else. I'm basically 99% of the time outside of filling out those applications, I'm heads down building my product. Your question about if I'm waiting for product market fit or if I'm waiting for something else before doing all that, I'd say no, I'm just doing it at the same time. Like I said, filling out the applications and continuing to build it out and continuing to talk to users. I think that's the most important thing. How I feel is that if I worry too much about getting funding or worry too much about that aspect of things, it's just going to make my velocity or make my iteration speed for my product slower. And I'd rather focus all my time on my product and just have the raising and all that just on the back of my mind, and I just handle it here and there with some applications. But yeah, I think it would only hurt my product if I was always worrying about it.
Yeah, that makes sense, dude. And something I liked what you said there is getting feedback from the users. Getting feedback from the users is ultimate. Ensuring that, you building according to those needs and the pains and the challenges and the gaps that they have. Because then it just becomes second nature to invest into it, right?
Yeah. I think a big thing that I learned from YC, or just from the building community in general, is how important talking to users is. Because I think before I was really into building, and I was just kind of imagining it in my mind. I was like, okay, yeah, when I launch, it's gonna be this perfect product and all that, and people are gonna love it, blah, 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 all that, whatever. But in reality, it's very rarely like that. It's more likely that it's better to launch faster, with maybe a very bare bones product of what you initially imagined, and then start talking to folks and then continue to iterate from there. That's kind of what brought me to, where I am at right now with Extra Thursday, building out the email management features, all that. It's all through talking to users. And if I had just, spent months building it out to be this like perfect thing, and then released it, by now I might not even have had it out like launched in public yet. It was just been moving way too slow. So I think that's the biggest thing right now that I've learned is just launch as fast as possible, move as fast as possible, and talk to users and build something that they want or they need.
Yeah, that's good, man. Thanks for sharing that. So, if you don't mind, just give us a brief overview. For some of the guys, perhaps someone's listening and they feel like they want to go and they want to apply for funding.
Unfortunately, I haven't, had the experience of actually raising and speaking to investors. I left YC about 2 weeks before demo day. But yeah, if there are folks out there that are interested in applying to YC, I can provide some advice there. So I'd say, with the YC application, is to keep it clear. So when you write out your responses to the application questions or even during interviews, you want to be able to keep your explanation of your product like really not dumbed down, but very clear and concise. And it needs to be in like 1000% needs to be, unless you're building in very deep tech or something. If that's not the case, it needs to be very free of technical terms, like overly technical terms. So essentially just explain it in layman's terms. And you need to be able to get that point across fast. So I'd say that's the most important part of the application. And the actual interview process, it's a blur. It's crazy. It's like 10 to 15 minutes, I think. And they come at you with like, the interviewers are usually the partners that you'll be working with if you get in. And they come at you really quick. There's like really no time for introductions. And they just start shooting questions at you. And you need to, if you want to do well, you're going to need to respond like within 10 seconds or less. So you don't want to have like these long-winded responses. You want to get across what you want to say as fast as possible and as clear as possible. So it's definitely, if anyone out there, if you're listening to this and you have a YC interview coming up, definitely you should practice. I mean, if you're not naturally inclined to speaking or you're naturally skilled at speaking, you definitely need to practice. It's something that doesn't come naturally to me. Being able to, in my head, think of some thoughts, ideas I want to get across, and then like process and have it come out very naturally and smooth and fast. That's not something that's natural. So, yeah, practicing for an interview is very important.
Okay. So the process, just to give it back to you, it's essentially you applying, you answer, I guess, a bit of communication over email. Then you get to the interview stage. How many interviews are there? Or am I missing a step there?
Actually, there's not even YC moves so fast. There's not even an email communication stage. They email applicants time to time. So I know some folks from my batch, the spring batch, that got emailed before the interview and stuff, just to ask some questions or get some information sent along. But the standard process, there's no email communication. You submit your application, they read it, and if they like it, you get like a meeting invite, a link. It just says like, hey, it's this time on this day, and essentially you show up and just do your interview. And then it's one interview, 10 to 15 minutes. And if they like you, they'll tell you by the end of the day that you're in. And if they don't, they'll tell you by the end of the day that you didn't make it. And I mean that's how that's the standard flow. But sometimes I have heard that folks don't hear back on their interview results until later on, not even the same day. Their goal is to get back to you on the same day. They make decisions very fast. So I'm pretty sure like during an interview, by the end of it, they've decided like yes or no. But I that's me guessing though. I'm not speaking on how the actual process works. And I have heard some folks also get like second follow up interviews. I'm not really sure the process for that. I've never when I applied to YC, it was just one interview, so I'm not really sure what the second interview usually covers.
Got you. Would you be able to share just a bit of an example of the type of questions that they ask in the interview?
Usually they're not questions that are very abstract, and you need to be able to come up with on the spot some answer that's like, oh wow, it has to impress them. It really isn't like that. It's facts. Like they're asking questions, and you just need to have the facts ready and just go. So I'd say, and there's lots of resources online for YC interview preparation. Um, I'd say, I'd say most of them are pretty good. One of them I use a lot for my interview prep is a website where you basically click on the space bar and it cycles through questions and it has like a timer built in. And you just answer the question. When you're done, hopefully the timer didn't hit zero. You just click on space bar, go to the next question. Just keep going. And I think that really refines your responses over time.
That's very good. Tell me, did it or will it help to get funding if you already have users on the app? Is that easier to get funding?
What I've seen is in YC, there were a lot of folks who got into YC with an idea. So zero users, not even pre-product. And then there are also a lot of users, I mean, a lot of folks who got into YC in my batch at least, with a lot of users actually. So I think the parameters for what they look for are very open. It's definitely not a deal breaker if you don't have users, and even if you're in idea stage. I think what's most important to YC, and not even YC, for a lot of folks in the startup world is team. Um, and if you're the right person to do it, and yeah, I guess if I were to do it from their perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense. If I see like a young Mark Zuckerberg, for example, and he has no product and he's pre-idea, but I know he's Mark Zuckerberg, or I can just tell he has the ability. I'd invest in him. So it's a lot of that. It's where they're really getting a feel of who you are, and if you're the one to do it, and if you're capable of doing it, and yeah, Because I think if you're capable and intelligent and hardworking and ambitious enough, it doesn't matter if you have a product or not, because eventually you will get there, you know. So they're really betting on you, I think.
Yeah, that's good, man. Tell me, would you say there's any risks to being funded by an accelerator?
No, I don't think so. In my opinion, I don't think so. I don't know, unless I'm being, there's some, uh, I'm somehow seeing it in a really short-sighted way. But I think, well, actually, there's a caveat to that. So I'd say being funded by a reputable accelerator or a really prestigious accelerator, one that knows what they're doing and has a history, or has a portfolio that is, um, impressive, like a YC or South Park Commons. I wouldn't say there's a risk. If you have an opportunity, if anyone has an opportunity to join those accelerators, 1000%, I'd say do it. Probably a different story if it's some accelerator you haven't heard of, but I wouldn't be able to speak to that. I have no clue. So
Do you know what will happen, for example, if you get funding and the product fails? Is it just part of the money they write off, or do you need to pay it back? What does that look like?
I'm actually not too sure. So okay. So from what I understand, when they fund you, they're not funding the idea, they're funding you. So you're allowed to pivot and you're allowed to change what you're working on as much as you want. Um, so if your current idea does fail, like they're not saying like, hey, we're just gonna give up on you. Um, it's it's really they're making the bet on you. So whatever your next step is, like, you can still deploy that cash to that, what you're working on. Your company can change directions, and it's not like written in fine print or anything that you're not allowed to change directions. So it actually happens a lot in YC, and even mid batch and then post YC. A lot of YC companies pivot. It's very common. So I wouldn't, yeah, I wouldn't say that they don't allow you to, change ideas and stuff like that.
Ryan, thank you so much for sharing, man. I do not want to keep you any longer. I just have one question for you, though, before we conclude here is, what is something you wish someone had told you before you pursued YC?
That's a good one. I think, no, you know what the thing is? I have an answer in mind, but people did tell me this before I pursued YC, but I was just so blinded by, oh, I got to get in YC, I got to build, that I didn't even listen. So I'm not even sure if you know, I would have changed anything that I had done. Even if, actually, I don't know, if I could go back in time, I probably would have listened to myself if somehow time travel is possible, because I probably would have been the only person I would have listened to at that point. But I would tell myself, a good co-founder is really important. Having a good team around you is really important, and not to underplay that. It's sometimes maybe you could be blinded by that because all you hear is like, hey, getting into YC and stuff, they really prefer co-founders or they prefer teams. So people just think, oh, I gotta get a team. So maybe they'll find random folks online or something. I don't know. But I'd strongly advise against that, I think, because you see in YC a lot of that happens. Sometimes co-founders break up, stuff like that. Um, and co-founders break up even when they've been friends for years and had a previous, great relationship. So it could really happen to anybody. And it's probably more likely to happen if you found your co-founder like off the street. So I'd say very strong emphasis on a good team. I watched like a video from Sam Altman, like one of the talks he was giving. He said it's better to be solo than to have a bad co-founder. If you don't have a team, I'd say don't force it to happen. Um, Maybe it'll happen organically. Either way, there's nothing wrong with going at it and building solo. at least from the start. So yeah, that would be my advice.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Well, thanks, Ryan. Guys, I've got Ryan's email management app inside of the description. Ryan, if you just want to quickly give us a quick rundown of what Extra Thursday is before we knock off what the users can expect by using it, and perhaps just your vision for it.
I'll keep it short for you guys, but essentially Extra Thursday, if you've ever needed email management, or if you're a high volume email user, that's kind of what I'm targeting. So it's essentially AI agents that live on top of your inbox, and it's able to track open loops, action items, and draft responses to emails, as they come in. So everything ideally should be as if like you had a personal assistant sitting all day in front of their computer, in front of your inbox. So the goal is to make email management as easy as possible. So you don't have to write responses, because I know a lot of people also have like inbox anxiety, and that's they just have so many emails they don't want to begin dealing with it. It's something that I experienced, myself as well. So it's a big reason why I built this out. But yeah, that's a big picture of what Extra Thursday is. Essentially, email management made easier. And then if we're looking at, down the road, my vision for Extra Thursday, ideally, I would like Extra Thursday to be, because I feel like email, building on top of email is, in my opinion, a gold mine. I feel like email inboxes hold like years of records of like relationships, of communication style, of decisions you made, events you attended. And it's essentially like if you had to pick one thing that explains you as a person, or that has some record of you as a person, the most complete record would probably be emails and like text messages or something. And especially for your work life, I'd say it would be email then. So I feel like my bigger vision for in the future would be, building on top of email to use this gold mine to essentially like run agents that are able to, or run agents that are so full of context from your inbox, your personal inbox, from your own information, that they're able to do a lot of the administration, not just email and stuff, scheduling, stuff like that. Do a lot of that totally autonomously, and do it in a way that it's exactly how you would have done it. Decisions that you would have made, based on your past decisions and stuff like that. So I'd say my bigger vision is essentially like fully autonomous versions of you, but that's way down the road. But yeah, that's essentially what I would like, But we'll see. We'll see. It could be that talking to users leads me down a different direction. But right now, that's really what I'm hoping.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Ryan. That was really solid. Big takeaways for me was velocity over perfection. Ryan reminds us, launch sooner, learn faster. The market will teach you if you allow it. And the next thing that is crucial to understand here is system design matters. Agents are getting wild, but bad architecture still hurts at scale. And remember, the relationships get to the revenue. So great partners lift the momentum, while the wrong ones burn time and trust. For our challenge, this lines up perfectly. We're staying lean, talking to users, and letting agents handle a lot of the repetitive work while we focus on clarity and outcomes. Next up, I'm going deeper on validating loops using agentic research, how to shift signal from noise fast so that we're not guessing on features or positioning. I'll also take you through the latest app that we're building that I also mentioned in this conversation with Ryan. So guys, if you enjoyed this, if you've found value out of this episode, hit the like button, click the bell if you feel called to it. And hey, there's a new feature called Hype if you really think it deserves the hype. And also let me down in the comments where you're from, what you're building, if you have any challenges. See you in the next one.